That's great. All right, so let's go. Something that I know that you really dug into as a N of one experimenter and really leaning into this information is genetics. So can you talk to me about what you learned about genetics? I get asked that question a lot, like different gene SNPs that I'm looking at as a functional medicine practitioner. But for you, I know people want to geek out about this stuff. So what was your discovery in learning about your genetics?
Yeah, I love talking about this. And I think this is another area that in the last 15 years, we've had the availability of so much more data. I remember in high school, the day in science class when they told us that they had figured out how to sequence the whole human genome. And that wasn't that long ago. And now we have at-home tests that can give you so much data. And what I saw over time is early on, I was interviewing people on the podcast and reading studies and books from people who were deep in genetics. I started to notice this trend that as we learned more, we tended to hyper focus on certain genes and get really excited about them, and then do all this stuff directly focused on that one gene. And so an example would be like MTHFR became very popular. We were all talking about it. People were supplementing with huge amounts of methylfolate. And when I started really delving into it, I realized, obviously, we know the body is very complex and holistic, and it's never about a single factor. And I think in genes, we kept getting caught up in kind of the trendy ones at the time without realizing that when you hyper supplement methylfolate, you might be affecting 12 other genes positively or negatively. And I didn't see really any resources that were addressing the interaction of genes. And especially if you're going to take something supplemental in a dose that could be almost like pharmaceutical in nature, by taking a big dose, it's important to be aware of the downstream effects of that. And so I'm a spreadsheet person, and I started building out these spreadsheets with all kinds of conditional logic that said, if I take this gene, what other genes, like let's put some if thens in place and see what other genes are getting affected, and actually try to develop some ratios within standard deviations of what may be to experiment with in a safe way, so we're not throwing other things out of alignment, and then kind of just inputting between that and my labs and my food intake and just keeping everything at a table for the experimentation of that. And I think we're close to seeing this on a more wide scale and available for all of us without having to build spreadsheets that take half an hour to load. But for me, that was the only option at the time. So I really started going granular on this and just realizing, just like we wouldn't want to necessarily jump into a pharmaceutical approach for any problem right away without taking other things into account, I think the same, in my mind, should be true for supplements, especially if you're taking them in big doses for a very targeted thing and basically using them as a drug. It's important to know how they're going to impact the body in other ways.